Hi, this is Jeff Driskill, and welcome to this edition of Fourth and Long. In this episode, we're going to be talking with Austin Gray. And Austin did a great job of introducing himself to us, but also laying out where he sees his greatest success. One of the biggest things that I took away from our conversation was that it's important for managers, leaders, to allow their team to learn and develop through failure. And so I hope you enjoy listening and watching this episode as much as I enjoyed putting it together for you. And I hope you come back for the next one. This is Jeff Driskill. Enjoy this episode of Fourth and Long.
Hey, so tell us a little bit about Austin. How did you get to where you are today?
Boy, that's a very long story.
We've got a full hour. Do you think you'll need 50 minutes of it? Or?
I'm a naturally a farm kid, right? Outside. I grew up on a ranch, northeast Missouri. We raised cattle. We rode horses. We roped. We did rodeo competition, ranch rodeo. So I grew up, riding a horse and doing all the stuff. I was a thrower, played basketball, did some baseball, but went to Northwest, and I was going to be an ag teacher. And I wanted to be a shop teacher, ag teacher. 18 years old, knew everything that I wanted to do with the rest of my life, right? Like a lot of 18-year-olds. And so I did that, got my ag degree, and walked onto the track team. So I threw shot put, discus, and then my main event was hammer throwing.
Okay.
Fast forward a couple years.
I got to tell you, I kind of see the hammer thing.
Right.
Kind of like Thor.
Yeah.
Kind of. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
Something like that.
Yeah. No, I see it. I see it.
Spinning around a lot. And so I did. I just really enjoyed that. And then I met my wife through that. And then I just kind of, graduated. I stayed in the agriculture industry. I worked at a hog plant in human resources and continuous improvement. And, got to do that. And that was on the East Coast, which was fun, but realized we missed the Midwest. So we came back. And then I've sold a little bit of insurance.
Now, where on the East Coast? Give me.
So just outside of Philadelphia. So,
okay.
So growing up as a kid on a 3,000 acre ranch to living in a condo, taking the train on the weekends downtown Philadelphia. It was just it was a different world, right? But it was
very different.
It was, but it was nice. I did my internship out there,
okay.
And I treated it like a vacation every weekend. I'm like, I'm going to go do something. I want to see something. So I got to see the mountains. I got to see the city, and I got to see the ocean for the first time in New Jersey, and just all of those experiences. And it was fun. It was fun for a while, but when you start to look at settling down and a family, it was like, we need to be back in the Midwest.
So were you married at that point?
We were just engaged.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
We were engaged. Megan absolutely hated it out there, full on. She couldn't really find a job that wasn't, traveling on the train every day, and we didn't really like that idea, And so, there were some days that I thought, okay, I'm going to come back from work today, and she might not be there. There'll just be a letter that just said, I'm headed back home, and
you're welcome to join me or not.
Yeah, 100%. And so every now and then I'd get off work and I'd call her, and I'm like, hey, she's still in Pennsylvania. We did that for a few months, and it was like we need to be back. So we came back, and I've done landscaping, I've done little construction, I have sold insurances, sold real estate, and then I was like, I'm going to go back to being the teacher that I did. I got my degree in. It was actually kind of funny how it happened. I was selling insurance to school districts,
okay,
and I figured out that if instead of talking to one superintendent, I could buy them lunch and talk to 10 during their monthly meetings. And I was introducing myself, and I kind of considered, like, okay, I got this degree, and I'll take it back. So Missouri retired teachers, just tell it like it is,
okay,
right? And I'll never forget, I was there, and I was talking to a group of retired teachers about their insurance benefits, and I was giving them my background to build the connection, right? And told them I had a bachelor's in ag ed and a master's in ag science. And I did that so that I could throw another year, mostly.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
I got an extra year of eligibility. And this little lady said, "Boy, that was a waste of an education, wasn't it?" And I was like, well, you know, I thought any education is wasted, but it did make me think for a while. And I was like, you know, you did pay for this. You did spend time for this. Maybe you should use this. So I'd been considering it. And anyway, I'm introducing myself to this group of superintendents, and I'm telling my background, you know, grew up on a ranch, ag ed, all this. And this guy just flicks a card across the table. And he said, "Hey, we're interviewing for an ag teacher. You give me a call if you're interested." And it was kind of one of those deals that, one, I was like, oh, you know, put that, trying to sell some insurance, you know, and put that in my pocket. But at the same time, I was like, he did his interview right then. You know, he knew I could talk. He knew I could present. He knew I was, you know, sociable. And so even when I went into the actual interview, a few days later, I went ahead and applied. And it wasn't an interview. You know, all the questions that he was going to ask, they'd been answered in that 30, you know, minutes that I was there, you know, Q&A and introducing and all that. And it was more like, hey, do you see yourself fitting in here? So it was a nice compliment to have. And that was a program that needed to be brought back to life. You know, found out years later that it was either the program would work with me or we would just get rid of it.
Okay.
And so I brought it back, and I was there for 7 years and enjoyed it. But, you know, having a family and COVID, you know, changed a lot for a lot of people.
Sure.
And did me as well. And I was like, I need a change. And so I'd been selling real estate part-time on the side here and there, and I worked with this lending team. And I was like, I think I want to be involved in real estate, but not as a realtor. You know, just kind of the travel and being away in the evenings and stuff just really wasn't clicking. And I thought, I like the numbers. So I approached the team that I'm with now. I just, you know, we were talking one day. He knew I was ready to be done teaching and knew that I planned to be a real estate agent. And I said, hey, what do you think about this? I join you and so forth. So here we are, 4.5 years later.
So you did the teaching, and somebody called you out on it. She questioned
well, this
the
one
value
I was selling
of the
insurance.
teacher. Yeah.
I was selling insurance. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you did the teaching. So was there a waste in the education or not?
No, nothing's ever wasted, you know?
Right.
And I do think, and it is funny. So now, and I get it complimented a lot by like leads and clients, and they say, man, it's just refreshing to talk with you versus somebody who has a sales mentality and a sales pitch. You know, every now and then I may go into, and I'll tell people typically, like, hey, this is going to sound like a sales pitch, but this is what I think, and this is what I recommend, and then I'll just go. But most of what I do, it is education. You know, you take a topic that it's difficult to understand, and somebody may not have a lot of knowledge, and you put it in terms that they can follow, understand, and feel comfortable with. It's education, you know? And I mean, I miss parts of teaching, you know, but I also, you know, realize like you don't have to be in the classroom to be a teacher. You know, I'm a parent and I'm teaching all the time, you know, and right now we're working on words because he's starting to learn that. And it's like
The ones he shouldn't be saying?
Well, no, we're not allowed to say those. But no, he's starting to pick up.
I realize we're not allowed to say them, and they're not supposed to. But it
I don't
wasn't
want to
my
hear
experience.
I don't want to hear it from mommy whenever. Did you teach him that? But no, so we've been, and it's just like, oh, I'm teaching him this, and he's asking questions, and you know, we go outside all the time, and you know, every now and then we do projects in the shop, you know, so he can help me build stuff, little things.
Sure.
And it's just like, yeah, breaking it down. And, you know, sometimes senior in high school or a 5-year-old, they're at the same knowledge when it comes to building things in the shop sometimes. Okay. And so, just break it down. And, but yeah, so I'm like, I get my fix a little bit from wanting to teach somebody, is being a parent, and then also with my clients without having that kind of same classroom structure and so forth.
Yeah.
So
you went from living on a 3,000-acre ranch.
Yep.
And interesting because I heard you say I was a farm kid.
Yeah.
And I lived on a ranch. Usually not interchangeable.
Yeah.
You know, because I had a little bit of that farming background because of my grandparents and you know on the farm.
Yeah, it's a real farm.
But yeah, it was a farm. Yeah. they didn't have horses,
Yeah.
they didn't have cattle, they just grew things,
Yeah.
you know. So it is a vast difference. But where I'm going, you went to Philly,
Yeah.
totally different environment. Do you ever miss being on the ranch?
Oh yeah, that was why. So we live on 10 acres now,
Right.
and I mean, you can go down. We can go down the full conversation. I mean, that was one of the things that kind of got me out of ag teaching was, thinking and talking to students that did want to be farmers and did want to be ranchers.
Right.
That, okay, let's go through the numbers of finding a piece of property, buying it, taking a loan against it, finding the animals, taking a loan against it, getting the equipment, taking a loan against it. Okay, now you have your ranch, and you also need to work another job to be able to cover all this. And, I step back 30,000 feet and I'm looking at it and going, that's the thing I used to want to do. I wanted to have the ranch and have the stuff. And I'm like, it's getting just as difficult for me as it is for them to have that thing. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the reasons why I kind of, I had to kind of switch career paths a little bit and realize that. But yeah, I mean, I do miss that, and I hope that one day we can get there. But we have our 10 acres. Try to grow some pumpkins every now and then. We've got an orchard. Each year we do get 3 or 4 head of cattle.
Right.
And, we typically will raise them and sell them in December. But this year, Dad kind of spun a little bit, and he goes, "Hey, how about we'll bring 3 heifers down. You guys raise them, you take care of them, and then we'll bring them back. And we'll breed them, and we'll have calves. And then that way when you guys come up, that our son can say, hey, that one was we helped raise that one, and have that little connection instead of just those are gone and all that." So, yeah, they're pretty fun.
Okay.
So it is fun to kind of be around them. But at the same time, I get to be a fair weather farmer, rancher, that I don't have to go out and break ice in the winter, and I don't have to feed hay. Because if you've got 3, you might as well have 50. Because you're doing the same tasks, that's just a little bit more.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I did. I kept, a few years ago, we kept them a little too long. And, man, that, when you just have a garden hose and a little bucket here and there and a little tank, it's like, oh, I made a mistake. I made a mistake. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, interesting that you, from the teaching perspective, you're teaching agriculture.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're teaching the economics, which makes sense that you're teaching economics of agriculture to the crew, but you're almost teaching it in the opposite direction from a challenging perspective.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, I didn't want to. You just go over the facts.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this was a student that just had when they lived on a place similar to how I had lived, as they lived on someone else's property and managed it and lived in their house. And then when he said, "I want my own," then we said, "Okay, let's look at the numbers." And unfortunately, it was going to be a tough row to go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. So we fast forwarded now. You're in the mortgage business. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the business that you have now, who you work for, what your ideal clients look like, who you're trying to attract, how you go about doing that, just give us kind of that overview of your business now.
So I work for Fairway Independent Mortgage, or Fairway Home Mortgage. Now we've kind of got a little bit of a rebranding, but still the same thing. Nationwide company. Right, so our company is competing with all of the major lenders. We are actually the largest privately owned company. Still, the original CEO that founded it. So we are competing.
Headquartered here in Kansas City?
No, it's headquartered in Wisconsin.
Okay.
Yep, we have 2 main offices in Wisconsin and Texas. Here in Kansas City, I believe we have 4 different branches. And so my technical branch is out of Overland Park, in Corporate Woods. And so I liked that idea of being a large competitor, but still kind of a small business, in some aspects of it, because the CEO is on the emails and he emails us, and it's a personal. It's not just drafted by someone in the office, and I enjoyed that. Kind of being a small town type of person myself. I like having the corporate impact, the corporate funds to be able to do different things and compete, but still a little bit, smaller. And so, yeah, I mean, typically, we work with anybody, obviously, but I do work with a lot of first-time home buyers, and I like that because I think previously being a real estate agent, I believe, makes my thoughts on a purchase transaction a little bit different than most. I don't look at it as just a bank lending money. I look at it as how can I, myself, the buyer, the agents, figure out how to make a deal work and put a deal together to help a client buy a property.
So this is you and the real estate agent collaborating to help the buyer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because and especially when it was more competitive. Now it's a little bit less competitive, but there are certain pockets of purchase prices and pockets of the city where it's still extremely competitive, 8, 9, 10 offers on the same house. And so it's not just, here's your letter, call me when you get a contract. It's okay, here's your letter, but if on this property, if you guys kind of take this angle or this angle, better chance to actually get under contract. So I try to take a little bit different steps towards helping those. You can't finance a loan if you don't have a contract to buy a piece of property, right? So number one priority is how can I help actually get you the property? And maybe that's calling listing agents, and confirming that, hey, we've actually done our legwork, and these people can close this loan, build that confidence. So anyway, yeah, so first-time home buyers, obviously we work with people that are investors also. Not as much, though. That is just, we do that, we offer that, but that is not probably our top client that we're going after, but we do help many. And then also, second purchases, selling and buying your next one and so forth. And that kind of gets the same type of thing, being competitive, contingent versus non-contingent, making the numbers work. And so that'd be, like I said, mostly anybody. I do like helping people that need any type of down payment assistance. I've got multiple programs. And so it's like, if this works, great. But if it doesn't, then we'll go to this. If that doesn't work, we'll go to this. And we just kind of step through our options. A lot of times it's kind of like a buffet. It's like you're approved many different ways, and how would, which option works best for you? Which one do you choose?
Right. So I hear you talking about the passion for the first time home buyer. So where does that passion come from working with those? Is it because their first time, meaning they're going to have multiple after that, and you anticipate them
business.
Coming? Maybe.
I never thought about that.
I'm digging in and trying to figure out what Austin's thinking about.
I think it goes back to that teaching aspect. Is those are the ones that don't know. And truthfully, if you're buying your second and third, you still don't know because it's probably been 8 or 10 years since you bought the last one. Everything changes. The rules have changed. The market, the structure. So I mean, I think that's a lot of it because you hear a lot of people say, well, we can't do that. And, we'll just keep renting. And it's like when you do that, and which is fine, there's always a time and place for different things in life. But to me, renting has always been reactionary, right? You're living in someone else's property. You are following their rules. You're asking permission to do things to the property. And I've had people call me on a Sunday afternoon crying because they got 30 days notice, 60 days notice. And it's time to go. And they'll be, I've lived here for 10 years, and well, he got a great deal to sell the house. So, and it's not a package deal. And so I think if I can help people, have a piece of property that they own, they control, they don't ask permission to, paint. And I've had people call and hey, this bathroom's been leaking for 3 years. And it's just, now it's a major issue because, they can't fix it themselves and they're asking permission and whatnot. And it's like kind of take control of your life. You have something that you own and that you can improve and then you can sell one day. And so forth. So I think that's where some of that is just kind of help people. There is some wealth building to it. I think that it, as some people say, like, well, yeah, when the house is paid off, it feels different. But also when it's yours and you're making the payment on your mortgage, it feels different. There's some pride of ownership and so forth that goes into that. And I like to help people feel that.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Yeah. I've heard you talk about that in the past, so that was why I specifically asked about the passion, because I know that it is part of that burning desire of yours to help them recognize the difference between being a renter and being a homeowner.
Yeah,
and
some people I've spoken with people who have bought, and a year or two later they're like, nope, it's not for me. You know, I don't like dealing with the maintenance issues that I can't just call somebody and so forth. And they're like, I want to go back. And that's totally fine. You know, it's not for everyone. But it's like for those people, like, I want this, you know, one day. And, you know, I've got some funny stories through the years. You know, you have great ones. And I think one of my favorites that I always remember. So I had these people, they called me and they're telling me about this house. And it's awful. You know, it sounds like it should be condemned. All of the things that are wrong, and they've asked for it to be fixed, and they haven't fixed, and electrical problems here, and plumbing problems here, and roofing problems here, and windows. And I'm like, oh my, I need to help these people buy a house. And they said, and we want to buy it. And you just have to stop for a second. You're like, what? And they're like, yeah, we want to buy it so we can own it. And I was like, you're going to buy all of these problems? And like, we're going to get a deal. And I was like, well, I guess you can talk to the landlord and see. But yeah, that was one of my favorites. Just all the things. Oh, I've got to help these people right away. We need to get them out of that house, and we want to buy it. So anyway,
well, they wanted the help. They just for a different.
They wanted that house, and then they wanted to fix it up, and that was kind of why I think they weren't fixing up all the issues, is because, well, we don't own it. You know, we don't own it, so we're not fix up someone else's house. Right. You know, but at the same time, there's living conditions and so forth.
Yeah. So, small town guy growing up on a ranch, you know, going to the big city, now lives in Kansas City.
Not the big city.
Not the
You're
big
saying
city.
Kansas City's not the big city.
Well,
Philadelphia is
compared to Philadelphia.
8th largest.
Compared to Philadelphia, Kansas City's down in the 20s. All right? So,
is it 20?
It's a big city, but it's not like Philadelphia.
No. It was really funny when I first came back here. Like, the first job that I got after I'd come back was downtown Kansas City. So it was, I was driving from Blue Springs downtown on I-70 the entire way, and, you know, people are honking, and, you know, these crazy hand gestures I've never seen before, and so forth. And I'm like, this is nothing. Have you ever sat in Philadelphia, like, just in a Saturday afternoon, you know? And so but again, after about a year of that, I was like, oh, this is terrible. Like, this traffic's awful. So it's all perspective.
It's absolutely perspective. I remember when we moved to Kansas City, you know, having grown up in the St. Louis area, I mean, traffic over there is you never talk about how far something is. It's always in time.
Yeah.
That's a 45-minute drive. That's an hour-and-a-half drive, you know, and you may be only going 12 miles, but that's the timeline because of all the traffic. And when we first moved here, I was shocked at people complaining about the traffic other than the triangle. And even the triangle, I mean, whoever designed that original triangle that thought one road going to 4 different highways was a great idea, and you only had one way to get to that next highway that you wanted to go to. Anyway, you could always see where the traffic started. You know, it was not like that there was this backup that had no rational reason, but there was an accident. There was something that you could see that caused it, but people were still upset. But the biggest difference that I noticed, hand gestures. Oh, no, we had the hand gestures.
Right. Those are universal.
They're universal, but here was the difference. In Kansas City, somebody cut you off, but they waved at you instead of doing a different gesture when you honked at them. Yeah. You know?
You know, it's so, if you think exactly what you're saying. When we moved down here, had some friends from high school that came down, and I would say, oh, it's the minutes there, and he's like, man, you know, you live in the city with all your minutes, you know, because we used to say miles. Sure. One of the guys that I worked with, actually, when I was in Pennsylvania, they adopted 2 sisters over a few year span, actually. Out of Kansas, and so, you know, that's a long process. So they came out here and essentially move here for a while while that's going on. And he used to talk about, like, it was so nice. He's like, we really enjoyed living out there. Everything's more relaxed. It's calmer. You just don't have that rush. And he's like, it was almost like a vacation just from the almost the stress of life. And then he's like, yeah, they noticed it. And I was like, oh, okay, and then, but yeah, when I came back, I'm like, oh, this is what he's talking about.
Yep.
You can feel that. But you just get used to it. It was really funny. I always noticed if you set at a green light out there, or a red light out there, and you don't see it here, but it was super common out there, that as soon as the light turned green, the person in the turning lane would shoot across there as fast as possible before those cars could come off the line.
Right.
It doesn't happen here. It was every single stoplight out there. And you only get one through, but if they were that first one, I think they were just sitting there like, NASCAR, just waiting to go. And as soon as it hit, they just shoot across 3 lanes of traffic as fast.
I used to do a lot of business in Chicago, and I had to, would fly in, and then I would be driving around the city. The thing that you always saw in Chicago is when the light turned red, 2 more people were going to go on the red light. And so you couldn't shoot across like that because you'd have gotten smacked because 2 more people felt that they should go on red, and it was okay. Never saw that in Kansas City until recently. I've started seeing that in Kansas City.
I was just going to say that. And I was like, I don't want to get into the grumpy old man conversation, but I just mentioned that to my wife the other day. I said, you've got to start being more cautious at stoplights, because I've never noticed it as much as I have now. But we'll go green, and you'll get a couple cars through before anybody starts going, thankfully. But it's getting really bad.
Yeah. So tell me, you've gone through this journey. Where do you get your motivation from? What is it that inspires Austin to continue to get up and go through and do the things that you do?
That's a deep question.
I'm sorry. But sometimes I have to ask those.
I don't know. So like I listen to a ton of podcasts. I listen to people talk.
Okay.
A lot.
Okay.
And so I pull from different areas and so forth, because we all get down, we all get negative. So no, I listen to a lot of motivational podcasts. And I think that's why I was really excited when you asked me to be here, because I'm like, hey, I get to do that. And so, I think that's where most of it comes from, is just listening. Just, what you put into your mind is what you're going to think about, right? If you put in negativity, you're going to think negativity. I'm not a news guy because it's negative.
Right.
It just is. It's just because that's what's going on, right? And so it comes along. And so even when I was listening to things, I started to notice, I'm like, wow, that person's really negative. And then after I'd listen to that, then I'd kind of get pulled down. And then I would want to share that I'd want to share that story with someone else. And as I started to step back and notice, I'm like, hey, when you listen to these things and when you talk about these things, you're not at your best, and you don't feel the best. You don't go into your next conversation the best. And so I think you should stop that, or at least be cognizant. There's nothing wrong with listening to what's going on in the world. It's the truth, right? Facts are facts.
But sometimes.
Well, right. Alternative facts.
Yes.
Is what my uncle said about his taxes one time. But anyway, and so I just started noticing, like, hey, what you put in your mind is how you're gonna feel. And so, especially if I'm having a day where it's just like, man, this is not going the way I want to, I need to listen to somebody who I know is going to pick me up. Sometimes it's music. But I heard a really interesting thing, and I shared it with my wife the other night at dinner, and the guy called it his 5-minute rule. And so he said he learned it when he was in sales from their sales manager. If you get told no, if you had a bad conversation, you lose a deal, whatever it is, you set an alarm clock. You have 5 minutes to be mad, be frustrated, cuss about it, cry about it, whatever it is. And when that goes off, it's over. And you just got to move on. And sometimes when it's like, oh, that's a nice thing to remember, because you get off that phone call with that lead that didn't go as great as you wanted it to go, or they went with another salesman for whatever reason. Most likely it's not you, right?
Right.
It's their finances. They felt like this thing was better for them. Don't take it personal.
Yep.
Be frustrated for a few minutes and then just move on. And that's easier said than done, but.
It is, but I like where you're going with the mind thought of it, because essentially what I'm hearing you say, and I'm in total agreement in the sense that you can choose to take it negatively. If you do, you have a time limit of 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Get over it.
Yeah.
The other side of that is, and this is where my mind goes with it, is rather than take it negatively, accepting it, but realizing that what lesson is it that we should learn from that instance or that experience. And that's where I choose to go is, okay, they chose not to go with me, not my choice, obviously, but let's figure out why they made that choice. And was it something that I did, said, or could have said that would have better educated them or enabled them to see a different outcome? But let's be brutally honest. I mean, in any selling scenario, just like any leadership scenario, the outcome of the sale, you just simply might not have been the best solution.
Right.
And that's okay. That's something that we have to accept, because the reality is, and this kind of takes us to our next, topic, is everybody gets to make their choice, and they're going to decide for themselves what is the right choice.
Yeah.
That's part of our responsibility. Whether it's as a salesperson or as a leader, we can simply share the information that they need to have to make those choices. But ultimately, they're going to make the choice, and them making the choice that we're not the right solution, it's not what we want, but it's an okay, it's at least a decision, and you can move on from there. All right?
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit. You mentioned your CEO and how he is involved. He's personal. What do you look for these days in the leaders that you want to work with, you want to be participating in or following at that point in time, and is also influencing you toward how you would be a leader?
Stacked question. Yeah. So, I mean,
I'm not setting you up, but I know you.
Right.
You run deeper than what you like to claim.
So when I worked in Pennsylvania, I worked human resources, organizational development, and I always remember what my manager was the VP of that group. I always remember what he said. He said, my job is to remove roadblocks so that you can be successful. If something is a roadblock, bring it to me. We'll talk about it, and we'll go from there. And sometimes it's a person, sometimes it's a strategy, sometimes it's a product. It's all these kind of things, and that's stuck with me for years. And so I've always liked a leader who did that.
Okay.
Right. And whether that be my manager, my manager's manager, whatever that may be. And so like when I was teaching, I had a great principal and superintendents the entire time, and they had that same mentality, is if something is an issue, bring it to me, let's talk about it and see how we can, again, remove that roadblock. So I think a lot of times it's just any leader that I want to be around, it's their priority is to help make me successful or allow me an environment to be successful.
Okay.
I have had managers in the past where it was, for example, when I used to do it, this is how I did it. Well, that's nice. 20 years ago, when you did it, it was very different. The rules were different, right? The market was different. And it was always like that wasn't, again, going back to that wasn't removing the roadblock. That was just telling me how they were successful, but not really putting it into comparable perspective. And so at that time, I couldn't go to my manager with issues. I would actually go to other salesmen and hey, how are you getting around these problems? And they would share, and then I could proceed. Mm-hmm. And so that was one of those deals where and that was truthfully one of the reasons I ended up leaving that company, was because I couldn't go to my manager to get that support, but I could go to the other salespeople who I could see them. They're being successful. What are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
And so they were leading me, but technically not even my leader. But I think that's a lot of it is somebody who can help me be successful by, giving me some assistance on what that may be, versus the pull versus the push. Of course, that style of leadership, servant leadership is always a really big one. That was the one that we really focused on in Pennsylvania, was give people the environment and then let them just be the best that they can, and hire the right people, put them in the right place, and then just step back and watch. So I think I'm really thankful about that job, even though it was short term. It's given me so much perspective years later. And
that's a great starting point in talking about being a servant leader and helping to clear the path. All right, the roadblock that you talk about. Mm-hmm. Too many times, what you call a roadblock may be an established process or a procedure that has to be followed. Mm-hmm. That if you didn't have to do that, well, you could be more successful, but it's been put there for a reason.
Right.
So how do you see the difference in somebody who's just sticking to the system? And again, how I did it 20 years ago, yeah, I'm right there with you. In fact, I have heard that the timeline acceleration has, it used to be if I did this 20 years ago, you can still do it. It used to be then 10 years, and then it was 5, and then it was down to 3, and now I've actually heard people talking about in the terms of weeks and months, that if we did it this way last month, that's no longer going to work.
Wow.
Because of the acceleration of information being available and all of those things. But where's the line as far as between removing the roadblocks, but yet maintaining the established process?
Well, I guess that's one of those deals that's not my decision to make.
Okay.
Whereas you bring that to the manager, and rules are rules, mm-hmm. I guess. And because in our world of lending, right, mm-hmm. there's a lot of rules and compliance that we have to follow in lending, and I think there's some people out there that skirt the rules, right, to try to make it work for them, and I think that's where I just kind of go. It's the honest way to do business,
sure,
and you stay with that. You educate to that. This is why we do it this way, and this is, and then you just kind of let the cards fall where they may. But there are the certain rules I can. I try not to make promises I can't keep.
Okay.
Just because there are, again, established rules that we just can't break them, especially in the world of lending.
Yeah.
Is that kind of getting?
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about, being honest. I mean, what is it that you're looking for? What are the traits that you expect from a leader? And to take that one step further, the traits that you as the leader are striving to have.
Ask me that one more time.
What are the traits you want in the leaders that you're going to follow?
Well, I think honesty.
Okay, honesty
is the top priority. So they've got to be honest. They have to function with the mindset that Austin's success, or anybody that they're leading, their success is the most important thing, right? And I think it's hard to kind of do this, but I think a good manager will also try to put everybody in a position where they're almost not needed, right? Where if they can just give someone an environment to where they can step back and say, okay, you guys, you don't need me anymore. You've almost worked yourself out of a position. Mm-hmm. The managers that I don't like being around, the leaders that I don't like being around, are the ones that will keep you just far enough beneath them so that you remember that they're important. And those folks are hard to work for.
Yeah.
even as a teacher. A teacher is a leader, right? And
Absolutely.
You lead by example. You want to give the kids enough knowledge that they can go and be successful. And also at the same time, knowingly watch them fail. So a story for that. When I was doing my observations when I was in college, and I always remember this has been years now, and it was hard for me as a teacher to do this. So I was in the building trades. I was watching this class. We were actually out on the job site. They're building a house. I'm watching, just standing by the teacher, watching the kids on the ladder. And he said, this board needs to be, 48 and a half inches or something. So he crawls down the ladder, and we're just standing there. We're just monitoring everything. Picks up the board, piece of siding, and he's like, what was that? Oh, I think it was 38 and a half inches. And I'm like, no, it's not. I didn't say anything because I'm like, I'm not the teacher. I'm just observing, right? Observe in silence. So I look at the teacher, doesn't say a word. And I'm like, maybe he didn't hear him. So the kid lines up there. He's like, yeah, that's what it was, 38 and a half inches. Cuts it, crawls up on the ladder. It's obviously too short. Oh, man. Throws it down, pulls that 48 and a half inches. Now, I'm assuming that I remember that story way better than the teacher or the student do. But that was one of the things as a teacher that I tried to do, as long as it was safe, to just let kids fail and let people fail, knowing that this isn't going to go so great. And I try to do that a lot as a parent, of just like, yeah, that's not going to work. But you just hold that inside, watch it play out. Oh, man, what happened? Oh, I cut that board too short. Oh, okay. And it was me, because for me, and my personality is I wanted to correct him. No, that wasn't it. It was 48, but I didn't. And I often wonder, I'm like, did that teacher, did he do that on purpose, or was that an accident? And so sometimes I think a good manager and a good leader puts you in an environment and lets you fail, and then steps back. Hey, what'd you learn from that? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not going to do this again. And it's safe, especially in a shop. No one's going to get hurt.
Right.
We're not going to ruin the reputation of our company. We're not going to lie to somebody. Right. But how'd that sales meeting go? Oh, not as good as I would have liked it to. Well, how come? And just really kind of let the person dig in and say, okay, so what do you think you should do differently next time? And sometimes I have to do that to myself. Even after this. Hey, if you got invited to another interview, what do you think you'd do differently? How do you think you'd know? And so I think you have to lead others that way, and you have to lead yourself that way. So those are the people that I like to be around, and not, let me tell you how to do it, because I don't do well with that one.
Okay.
Sometimes I don't even tell myself what to do, because then I just don't want to do it, because I told myself.
Well, to that end, so obviously the honesty and the ability that they are working for you. The servant leader model is often shared, or at least espoused, and whether or not they're actually following it or not, I've always referred to similar as a manager, my customers are now my team.
Yeah.
And how would I treat my customers? And what would my customers expect from me? Yeah. And, try to lead that way. Loved the example that you gave, but also the challenge. And it's twofold. And I want you to talk a little bit more about it. First, the challenge of, if I weren't here, what would you do? Not giving you the answer, and putting that challenge in front of you, but then allowing you to make the mistake, obviously, in a controlled environment to some extent. We're not going to make a fatal mistake. You would never let somebody in the shop maybe cut their finger off because they're holding the board wrong,
right.
But you'd let them cut the board wrong because it's going to be too short, and then ask them why that happened, and let them problem solve that out. That is a great development from not just to help the salespeople or to help the student, but it's the leader's way of developing the next line of leaders. So talk to us a little bit more about both that, forcing them to make the decision, empowering them to make the decision, but then also how you grew from overcoming your mistakes.
Well, I think if empowerment just comes from encouraging, right?
No.
Oh, I wasn't sure. Is this
No, my nose itched.
call it off?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think one is just putting someone in the environment to be successful, right?
Yeah.
So you come along, you get licensed, right? And now you're a loan officer. And you just say, well, good luck. Let us know when you get your first sale.
Right.
That's not going to function very long. And I think that's what happened a lot, and why we don't have as many lenders. Of course, the market as well. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people just jumping in when it was easy, and really didn't have any training and any knowledge, and it all just kind of worked until there was fewer customers out there, and then they struggled because they didn't have that environment to go out and just feel like they would be successful and having conversations. And so I think is giving some type of structure is very important, and giving some type of guidance. I'm not really big on the scripts, right? You doing sales scripts,
right,
especially verbatim, but I think there's a lot of good points in them that it's like, okay, I can take this, and then I can make it my own. And working, for someone who's good with you, making it your own also. And then what was your second question?
How have you learned from your failures, the things you've done wrong? What have you taken away from that?
Well, I think the biggest thing is just, it's not you, right? And maybe it is sometimes, but for the most part, like you said earlier, they're making a financial decision for themselves. And it's not you, it's the numbers typically that like this just doesn't make sense for a certain reason. And sometimes our personalities just don't match. Right. And so for some people, I've actually had a couple of clients, and right now it's getting to be an interesting market. So I have done some refinances on my own property, and I did them when the numbers made good financial sense. The whole package, not just a cheaper monthly payment, not just to get a lower interest rate, but not just plugging in tens of thousands of dollars to my loan just to get a cheaper monthly payment. To me personally, it doesn't make sense. As a lender, I typically like to lay that out to folks and almost encourage them not to do a refinance right now, even though that's how I receive commission, because I think that's what's best for the client, unless they strongly feel differently. Mm-hmm. And right now, the market, I've been getting some pictures sent from past clients. Hey, they're promising this rate and this, and they're not doing the full, honest breakdown of the numbers,
Right.
And it's like, well, I think to some people, they would almost just tell people what they want to hear sometimes, and not maybe give them the best, financial advice, and then let them make the decision. Right. However, I've been in that situation before where, the client almost pushed me to where it's like they just want to be told what they want to hear. And oftentimes I'm not really comfortable with that because it's not what I truly believe. But sometimes I do think in this world of sales, we just tell people what they want to hear and make the sale and go down the road. And sometimes that's going to be a difficult client for me to work with because that's not my strategy of sales.
Right.
But sometimes, you step back and you realize, okay, this is what the person wants. It may not be the way I would do it, but this is what they want. I have a solution I can provide, and then you work with them to provide it. And sometimes that's harder to swallow because it's like, well, that's not how I would do it. But sometimes, you do what's best for the customer, and the customer chooses what they want. But I do think as I've matured and gotten older, I spend more time thinking back, okay, how could that have gone better? How could even something really good? How do we double down on that and just keep rolling with that? Right. It's not always just learning from the failures, but learn from the wins too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the point that you're making is classic leadership 101. You know, from the standpoint of, as you're talking about it in a sales process, I've presented the options. They've made their choice, and it wouldn't have been the choice that I would have made, but it was their choice.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very similar to what a manager does. Here are the things that you can do. You get to choose them, and the manager has to allow you to step back, or they have to step back and say, okay, not the way I would have done that, but I'm going to let Austin do it that way because he gets to learn the lesson from it.
And then at the very end, sorry to interrupt, but
No.
and then be okay with how it turned out.
Yes.
That to me, that's the hardest part the manager has to have. Did it get done the way you want it done? No. The how wasn't there. But did it happen? Yes. And being okay with that.
And I would almost challenge it is exactly the definition or the separation between a leader and a manager.
Yeah.
Manager is going to manage processes and things, and they're going to tell you how to do it, how it has to be done because it's a process.
Yeah.
The leader is going to say, this is the process, but here are your options, and they're going to let you choose and learn the lesson from it.
Yep.
So that's great. So we could probably talk a lot longer, but we are running out of time.
Yeah.
So I want your final thoughts on this, so to speak. What are the messages that you would share if somebody came to Austin and said, Austin, I want to be a leader. What should I do in order to be the most effective leader and develop to be where you're at? What would you tell them?
Sit and think. Think for a while. And just kind of like you've asked me a lot of questions, and you've made me think back, 15, 20 years of, doing different things. And take a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle. What do you like in a leader? And what do you not like? What are the tactics that they've used that you enjoy and enjoy working around? And what do you not? And see if you can kind of put those together of these are the style of leadership that I enjoy working with and being around, and see what's connected. I think what you'll find is most of the time, some people like being told what to do. But in general, I believe that you'll see that most people don't. And if you want to work at being a leader, how can you work at pull versus push? And I think that's a big thing is figuring out what you like, the style that you like, and then how will you achieve that with the people around.
Okay. Excellent. Austin, appreciate you being here with us
Thank
today.
you for
And
that.
I see a future, another session that we can
All right.
get together.
Okay, I'll see you next week.
All right.